ceasefire, not a repetition of what we've seen in the past, where Israel has agreed to a ceasefire, but then attacks continue.
Well, according to the initial reports we're getting just now in the past few minutes about the Israeli government not intending to withdraw from the locations it has occupied. And as we've seen, Sami, previously from the previous ceasefire, while Hezbollah stopped firing rockets into Israel, Israel kept holding on five specific locations inside southern Lebanon, having troops permanently there and calling this a ceasefire while keeping bombarding sites, because they say that Hezbollah was regrouping, rearming, manufacturing or transferring weapons. All of that Israel used as an excuse to continue bombarding. So yes, we might be looking at a situation where Israel wants a one-sided ceasefire with some sort of a restraint on the operations they can operate into or strike. Like, we know that in the past few days there has been pressure on the government to decrease the amount of attacks on Beirut, on other sites in Lebanon, and keeping that focused on the southern Lebanon front. Of course, we are expecting something similar from experience, what Israel has been doing in Gaza, what Israel has been doing in Syria, what Israel has been doing in the region, signals to us that even though they talk about a ceasefire, they give themselves the liberty to breach it one-sided and continue their attacks using different excuses for that attack.
All right, let's thank Nida Ibrahim there, our correspondent reporting to us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank on this latest line. And we've got now more lines dropping, but let's just remind you, it's 1600 GMT. You're watching Al Jazeera live from Doha, and we're continuing the breaking news story with another additional line dropping after the announcement from Donald Trump on social media of a 10-day ceasefire in Lebanon, with Donald Trump saying that will begin at 2100 hours GMT, or 5 Eastern time in America, midnight in Lebanon. I think we can go to our correspondent, Alan Fisher, our chief U.S. correspondent. He joins us from Washington, D.C. And Alan, as we're coming to you, I think another line is dropping now from the U.S. president with some more diplomatic moves afoot. Bring us up to speed with what he's saying.
Well, I sent an email to the White House press office, as we tend to do, to ask them if there's any more information. And literally, as I did it, we got a new Truth Social post from Donald Trump, who has said, and we'll put it up on screen so you can read it here as well, is that in addition to the statement just issued, talking about the ceasefire, obviously, I will be inviting the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, and the President of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, to the White House for the first meaningful talks between Israel and Lebanon since 1983, a very long time ago. Both sides want to see peace, in capital letters, and I believe that will happen quickly. Signed by Donald J. Trump. Clearly then there has been a conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu. There has been an invite extended. There's no timescale on when that will happen, whether it'll be in the next 10 days or whether it'll be an extended period. Here's a diplomatic thing to consider. Presidents don't tend to invite people to the White House to talk peace unless they're fairly confident some sort of deal can be reached between the two sides. Normally, it's done by what they describe in diplomatic terms as Sherpas, people who do all the heavy work, who put the agreement in place, who check the legalities of it all, and then it's up to the leaders to sit down and sign it. Donald Trump clearly believes, by his force of personality, that what has been a long-running war between the two countries, long-running diplomatic dispute between the two countries, he can sit Joseph Aoun and Benjamin Netanyahu down in a room and get some sort of agreement. As again, we don't have any time scale for it, but you would suspect that to continue, you would hope to get this done some point in the next 10 days here at the White House.
All right, that's a very important line. Thanks for bringing us up to speed. with that, our chief U.S. correspondent, Alan Fisher, there from outside the White House. Joining us now from Beirut is Ali Rizk. He's a security affairs analyst and U.S. foreign policy specialist in Lebanon. Good to have you with us. So first of all, let's start with this latest announcement of the U.S. president. I think we got it up on the screen. The U.S. president has invited the Prime Minister of Israel, the President of Lebanon, to come to meet face to face. How likely is that, given the lack of consensus within Lebanon right now over that kind of level of meeting?
Yes, again, this brings me back to Trump's utter ignorance of the regional dynamics and of Lebanese dynamics. I think that Trump possibly thinks that it's simple to do an Abraham Accords-like deal between Lebanon and Israel. However, Lebanon is not Bahrain, it's not the UAE, it's not all those other countries which did pursue and did make those deals with Israel. Lebanon has fought Israel on many occasions. There's been a war between the two sides. A large segment of the Lebanese population still sees Israel as an enemy. So it's possible that Trump is basically thinking in two simple terms. I think he doesn't realize the magnitude and how much how unrealistic such a scenario would be for the Lebanese president and Prime Minister Netanyahu to be at the White House. Now, it could be a way to put pressure on President Aoun and on Netanyahu, especially on President Aoun, because he would be the one to face immense pressure if he were indeed to go to the White House and normalize ties with the Israelis. So it's unrealistic, but I don't think it's completely out of the picture. I don't think it's completely impossible. And I think maybe, just maybe, President Aoun might have told Trump that he might be willing to accommodate him in terms of perhaps meeting with Netanyahu in exchange for reaching this ceasefire. And maybe that is one of the factors that motivated Trump to declare this ceasefire in the way he did, that he would get in exchange from President Aoun the Lebanese pursuing an Abraham's Accord-like deal. And we all know Trump's obsession with his own legacy and with his ability to be a deal maker. So I think these were the dynamics at play, most likely.
Ali, let me just tell you, we've had some reaction from the Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, saying, "I welcome the ceasefire announced by President Trump, a key Lebanese demand we have pursued since the first day of the war." And he goes on to say it was our primary objective in the Washington meeting on Tuesday. He congratulates the Lebanese and offers his condolences to the families of martyrs, he says. Now, the thing that comes to mind, though, both reading this statement and listening to what you're saying, you said that Donald Trump might be trying to bring pressure on the two leaders, but pressure to do what? When you listen to what Marco Rubio has repeatedly said, it sounds like he pretty much framed this process of talks and meetings between the two sides very much along the lines of the Israeli narrative that this is a meeting to disarm Hezbollah. This is a meeting, as he put it, to free Lebanon from Hezbollah, rather than what assumedly was the Lebanese position. This is a meeting to end the Israeli occupation of Lebanese territory. This is a meeting to try and return people back to their homes and provide them with safety from Israeli attacks and end the Israeli invasion. Is there a common agreement on what the agenda is if he's bringing these two now to the White House?
I think that Trump is under pressure from two directions. He's under increased pressure because of the economic repercussions due to what Iran did in the Strait of Hormuz. We know that that's having a real impact. It's starting to kick in heavily on the average American citizen. So domestically, he's under pressure to end the war with Iran or to address the issue in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Iran, as you know, has linked the issue of the Strait of Hormuz to the Lebanese front. So he's under pressure to stop the war in Lebanon so that he could alleviate the economic difficulties which are having an impact on the average American citizen. Now, on the other hand, he's under pressure from Netanyahu because Netanyahu, as your correspondent was rightfully saying, Netanyahu sees the issue of Hezbollah very much as his own legacy. Like he was able to deal these painful blows against Hezbollah during the 66-day war in 2024. Now Hezbollah's put up quite a good fight. And so if Netanyahu were to end it now, those achievements would have gone to waste, which he considers to be his major achievements. So he would accommodate Iran in order to alleviate the economic sufferings. At the same time, he would serve Netanyahu's agenda and maybe say to Netanyahu, you have to stop firing now. But the issue, the anti-Hezbollah agenda is not removed from the table. We're going to continue to pursue that. I think that's the approach which President Trump has taken now. Will that be successful? I very much doubt, and I think a lot is going to depend on what happens between the Iranians and the Americans. I think that's going to be more important for Lebanon than any meeting that could take place between President Aoun and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. By the way, President Aoun might have been caught by surprise with this announcement. You know, Trump, he's done this before. He makes his announcements without holding consultations. He might have caught President Aoun by surprise. Then again, as I was saying in my previous answer, he might have agreed to that during the phone call, whereby in exchange for pursuing an Abraham-like agreement, Aoun requested a ceasefire, and that was the deal which was set up. So I think these are the dynamics that Trump is caught between the pressures of Netanyahu and the economic pressures linked to the war against Iran, and I think that he chose the middle ground.
And as we're talking, I should point out to viewers, we're getting more lines dropping and some reaction from Hezbollah through their member of parliament, member of the Lebanese parliament, lawmaker Hassan Fadlallah, saying that the group had been briefed on a short-term or possible short-term ceasefire to start on Thursday night, and saying basically they would accept it depending on the posture that Israel takes and on Israel halting all forms of hostilities. So that sounds, Ali, like we will stop fighting if they do.
Yeah, indeed. That's not a surprising stance from Hezbollah. I mean, Hezbollah also has its own popular base, which it has to take into consideration. Your correspondent from the south was reporting how many people are eagerly awaiting a ceasefire to kick in, to start. And that's no surprise. That stance taken by Hezbollah. But again, is this part of a broader deal whereby the Americans accept Iranian influence in Lebanon? Or is it rather a deal to satisfy Netanyahu, that instead of tackling Hezbollah by war, let's tackle Hezbollah by normalizing these ties? Now, judging from what Trump is doing and judging from his posts, it appears that he's opting for the second one, meaning that let's stop the war for now, but we're going to continue to go after Hezbollah domestically in Lebanon. And I think Hezbollah also realizes that, but it's in Hezbollah's interests to stick to a ceasefire if indeed the Israelis also live up to their end of the deal.
All right, let's thank Ali Rizk there. We'll come back to you in a moment, Irisk from Beirut. But let's go over to our correspondent, Abaida Hito. He joins us live from Tyre. It's been a day of destruction there in Lebanon. Any sign at this point after this announcement of a ceasefire that's set to begin now in less than 5 hours? What, it's about 4 hours and 58 minutes, or 48 minutes rather. Any sign of things quietening down, or are we seeing a tactic that Israel has employed in the past of actually surging up attacks before a ceasefire kicks in?
Ironically, you're asking if we're hearing anything. We're actually hearing more explosions. So there's no sign of any de-escalation yet. We can still hear a drone flying above our heads. These explosions are not necessarily happening right around us, but we can hear them in the distance. This is the southwest front where Israeli troops are heavily based, occupying expansive territory inside Lebanon, the entire town of Naqoura, where the UNIFIL headquarters is located, as well as the town of Bayada. These are areas where Israel has been present in the past. In the 2024 66-day war, they were present in this coastal region as well. They were present also in some of the places they're fighting to take control of as we speak. The city of Bint Jbeil, there is still a fight going on inside that city. There are also reports of strikes in Nabatia, also around Khiyam and the Eastern Front. There's no sign of a de-escalation yet, but as you mentioned, the clock is ticking. People here in Lebanon are used to this kind of pattern, we can call it. Right before a ceasefire goes into place, both sides dig their heels in and take advantage of that wait time to carry out extensive airstrikes. People here are telling me that in 2024, before the ceasefire went into place, there were thousands of strikes that took place in the hours leading up to the announcement of that ceasefire. We haven't seen that kind of escalation here in the southwest front, but there are still reports of Israeli strikes in other parts of southern Lebanon. And as I'm speaking now, again, I'm hearing explosions in the distance. Which is a huge indicator that there is no de-escalation as of yet. We don't have a confirmation from a Lebanese official about the timing or the details of this ceasefire yet. We've only received an announcement from the U.S. president through his social media platform. So that's another huge factor. Once the Lebanese officials confirm that a ceasefire is going to go into play, then the ball is going to be in Israel's court. And as you were discussing with the guest just before coming to me, this is also about posturing. Hezbollah has announced that they would potentially be okay with the ceasefire, accepting this ceasefire, if Israel would stop attacking southern Lebanon and Lebanon as a whole. So it's not clear yet whether that's going to happen, but there's a lot of pressure, it seems, from the White House on both sides to accept this deal. And to make sure that there's at least 10 days of peace, as President Trump called it in his social media post. But that might not be enough to, convince people here in Lebanon to engage in peace talks with Israel. They have a long history of aggression from Israel into their country. Israel occupied these areas for nearly 2 decades between 1982 and 2000, and then fought several wars with Hezbollah and the Lebanese people over the last several decades. There's a lot of bad blood to be dealt with, to work out. I don't think that this ceasefire is going to be the end all to reaching a peace deal between both countries, because there are a lot of regional dynamics and external pressures on the Lebanese people, including Hezbollah's affiliation with Iran. The big question is going to be whether or not Iran is going to allow this process to go forward, at least allow for Hezbollah to be involved in this process, because it would require recognizing Israel and discussing the disarmament of Hezbollah, which has been one of the biggest issues for Israel. Israel doesn't want to have a group that poses a threat to its country, firing rockets from southern Lebanon into the northern part of the country. We've already heard from residents of northern Israel saying that this is a huge failure for the Israeli people, especially the people living in the north of Israel, because they believe that Hezbollah will continue to pose a threat. And now this border zone, or this buffer zone on the border that Israeli officials keep talking about, is meant to prevent these kinds of attacks. But the extent of that buffer zone, how big is it going to be, what is it going to look like, are people in these towns where Israeli soldiers are currently occupying going to be allowed to return? It's really unclear. And I think these are all issues that are going to have to be discussed between the representatives of all of these warring sides after the bombs stop falling. It's going to be extremely difficult to discuss the details of any kind of peace plan while both sides continue to strike each other and they continue to put the lives of hundreds of thousands of people at risk as they do that.
All right, Obaid Hito there joining us from Lebanon. Thank you for that update. Let's continue the discussion in the studio. And we have joining us Paul Musgrave. He's an associate professor at Georgetown University in Qatar and a U.S. foreign policy analyst. Joins us live here in Doha. So obviously this will, if this ceasefire is confirmed, if it comes actually into effect, will be, I'm sure, celebrated in places like Lebanon. However, this is not happening in a vacuum, right? There is a bigger picture going on of this happening while the US and Iran try to sort out the war. Although they've been, the Israeli and the US, perhaps diplomacy has tried to keep those tracks separate. Is there in reality some connection between these two, and especially the timing?
Well, I think right now we have to speculate, but certainly that's where my thoughts immediately turned. To have this ceasefire, or we could actually just call it a directive for the Israelis to cease their fire, because Lebanon isn't really a party to this conflict. It's been the Israelis who have been attacking Lebanon. To have this announced so dramatically, almost casually on President Trump's Truth Social website, really suggests to me that this had its origins in Washington. And we do know that the Iranians have been pressing for an end, or at least a pause to this fighting. And I also think that for